Is the BMW R1250GS outdated? Does it die at 100,000 kilometers, or does it last forever and still remain a really good travel enduro? The answer is in this video. For many years, the BMW R1250GS was the standard product in the travel motorcycle and travel enduro league. And then suddenly it kind of ended up living this niche existence, especially in media coverage. Everyone only talked about the 1300 and not always in a positive way. And now I had the chance, because I grabbed the opportunity right at the shop, to borrow an R1250GS from Hispania Tours down here in southern Spain, not far from Malaga, not brand new. I think it has around 40,000 kilometers on the clock. And I went on tour with it here in Andalusia. Before that, of course, I did a lot of online research. We have, across our videos, several 100,000 comments. And if you add up all the R1250GS videos, we're talking several thousand comments just on that topic. And I went through all that data to see what you, meaning you 1250 riders, think about the machine, especially if you've done a lot of kilometers on it. But as an introduction, I first want to talk to the founder of Hispania Tours. He's an emigrated Styrian guy because he wants to make money with these bikes. And for that, he has to be able to rely on them. Maybe he has fewer nostalgic feelings. Maybe he's not led by emotion. Maybe he's just a cold, hard numbers guy. And he still has the 1250 in service. And I'm asking myself, why doesn't he replace everything completely with the 1300?
The main part of our fleet has switched over to the 1300 GS and GS Adventure, but of course we still have a few of the 1250 GS and a few 1250 Adventure bikes here. Why? Just because a newer motorcycle came out doesn't mean the 1250 GS concept suddenly became worse. For us, the 1250 GS was basically the backbone of our fleet, of our group tour bikes. And it proved itself over the years, it proved itself really well. And even now, although there's a newer motorcycle, no question, more sporty, more agile maybe, the 1250 still has its place with us, and I believe it definitely still has its place in the travel market.
I also think that over the last 2 years, because of the 1300's launch issues, BMW's image in general has taken a bit of a hit. So I also wanted to ask Johannes Suppen how things have actually gone in practice with the 1250. He had, I think, around 100 vehicles in the fleet. And there were quite a few 1250s among them. And he was doing 30,000 kilometers per year with his tours and his whole operation. So I wanted to know what kind of long-haul experience he has.
The 1250 GS, when you go on a trip, rides super well. It's stable. Of course, it's not as agile, but it has that great punch. When you want to get on the gas, you can load it up with a passenger, with luggage, and it still moves almost the same as if you're riding alone. So for me, it's still a top travel motorcycle. And like I said, it doesn't have all the newest technical innovations, but for years it was for us about as close to travel motorcycle heaven as you can get, and that hasn't changed. So for us, it still has value, and we still see it as a great travel bike.
What also interests me, people always talk about this shaft drive topic with BMW. I'll get into that later, but for the start, I want to know, what does the man from real-world practice say about the shaft drive on the R1250GS?
The R1250GS is probably the most mature motorcycle that's still on the market. It's been tested millions of times by all kinds of people who've ridden the 1250GS, the 1200, the 1250. And for us, it was like this. Normally, one season with the 1250GS, and there were no failures. And because you mentioned the shaft drive, With us, the shaft drives are maintained, checked, cleaned, if necessary, lubricated, and we have never had a single shaft drive problem on any motorcycle, on any tour, and on any 1250. So with proper maintenance, I'd say it's more of a theoretical problem. When a bike comes back to us, it gets a general check, it gets cleaned, it gets checked by the mechanic, and if it came back from a bigger tour, or after a certain time or more kilometers, or if it was in Morocco, then we specifically open the shaft drive, we look inside, check if there's dirt, re-grease it, close it again, and then it rides like new.
Those were interesting insights. And now on my tour, I was able to refresh my own riding impressions a bit. And that was exciting because 2 weeks ago, I rode the 1300GS and also the R12GS. And now I can position the R1250GS pretty well in my head. And I think the best way to describe it is it's a travel motorcycle. Like, it's even more clearly positioned than it used to be for me, because the 1300GS feels a bit more dynamic, more nimble, more agile, and definitely a bit sportier. The engine is even stronger. Whereas the 1250GS gets its emotions, that irrational charm, mainly because it has that thumping punch from down low. And yeah, I don't even like it that much, but also that accompanying low boom boom, that dull rumble, that bassy sound. It has that, and that comes together with a long-distance comfort that is honestly breathtakingly good. And it does not need to hide from the 1300GS in any way. This long-distance comfort is breathtakingly good. And it's of course clearly above the R12GS, which is more cool, more stylish, but not as long-distance oriented. But even in direct comparison, like I've ridden recently, this long-distance comfort is seriously good. In terms of electronic features in real life, yes, the adaptive ride height system on the new 1300GS, even if you're tall, is practical, and you do miss it here and there when you're fiddling around maneuvering, because with such a heavy motorcycle, it's still sometimes tricky, even as a tall guy. And when it automatically lowers itself, it's a nice feature that you miss in practice. Now, if I think about how Bonsai, the well-known long-distance rider, manages fine on the 1250GS with his height, then really nobody with my body size should complain that it doesn't have adaptive ride height. That would be embarrassing, but you do notice it, gotta mention it. What you also notice, what it still does amazingly well, and that has not been forgotten, is this absolutely genius balance. No matter whether you've got the top case on, the panniers on, no matter what the corner radii are like, you can direct this motorcycle in a playful way. That works as well as on hardly any other travel motorcycle, and it hasn't lost that quality at all. So for me, after this intense Andalusia tour, it's still a travel motorcycle that I'm super happy to recommend, super happy to ride, where I'm not even remotely in a position to say, yeah, that's old iron now, or you have to replace that. It's a breathtakingly good travel machine. And now, if I have to go into what did I find in my research and what does it feel like in practice? Yeah, I wrote down a few things I found in our comments. It's like this. The engine, apparently, even at very high mileage, 100,000 to 200,000 kilometers. From what I've read in our marketplace and also in YouTube comments, the substance is insanely good and you can ride it for an insanely long time. They have, again, based on what I've seen people ride, hardly any oil consumption, almost zero. Meaning between services, you don't really have to top up anything. And the people who've actually opened the engine up said pistons, bearings, everything's still top condition. If we go further to the drivetrain, the gearbox is always a topic because it feels a bit clunky and rough. When you shift in first and second at low speed, you sometimes think, oh man, those poor gears. But everything I've read does not suggest the bike has an actual gearbox problem, except from a comfort perspective. The gears don't suffer from it. It's more something you feel, something that reduces comfort. So don't let that make you nervous. But please definitely correct me if you see it differently or if you've had different experiences. But in our community, for the R1250GS gearbox shift mechanism, there are basically no red flags in the comments. What's also interesting, back then, a lot of people talked about the shift cam technology. I've ridden engines with shift cam, I've ridden engines without shift cam, and in practice, it works unbelievably well. And you don't feel magic happening in the engine. And there also haven't been any noteworthy issues mentioned. So nobody needs to buy the older engines out of fear, thinking less tech is better, because they're afraid the newer shift cam engines are less reliable. That hasn't proven true at all. Statistically and based on experience reports in the community, it's solid, it's great. What you can say, there are a few annoying little things that show up even at lower mileage. One is that clunky fuel cap. I mean, I don't know. Over my career, I've probably ridden 20 different 1250 GS bikes. And sometimes that fuel cap opens beautifully, and other times you think, dude, that can't stay good for long. And indeed, I've read again and again that some people have issues with the fuel cap. Other small stuff, the microphone for the SOS button, the emergency call unit, that's something that in rough or weather use eventually needs replacement. It's not expensive, but it's annoying when you get little issues like that. And exhaust valves, if you've got 100,000 kilometers plus, from what I've heard, then at some point you'll want to clean them. Small things, annoying, yeah, but overall it's a very, very reliable motorcycle and one that you can still recommend on the used market, even with high mileage, and it's therefore a real alternative to modern travel motorcycles. Cost-wise, there are two things that are important on a used purchase, especially if it has a lot of kilometers, like 100,000 plus. One is ESA, the electronic suspension. The stock system isn't built in a way that makes it easy to service or swap individual damaged parts. So when the damping fades, when the unit gets weak, you basically have to replace it. And that gets expensive. Well over 1,000 euros once you include labor. And then if you're replacing it anyway, it makes sense to replace it with an Öhlins unit, a Wilbers unit, or something similar. Because if you're a high mileage rider, those are fully serviceable long term. You can do seals, you can replace individual parts, replace small components. And over time, that's the cheaper solution. So if you're buying one or if you already own one, that might be an investment that comes up somewhere around 100,000 to 150,000 kilometers. The second, always hot topic is the shaft drive. It moves, it has to move because the suspension travel needs flexibility. And that plastic/rubber material, like any material, gets a bit more brittle over time due to sunlight. And then in places, it's no longer 100% sealed, maybe it's 99.99%, and moisture gets in, but then it can't get out. And inside that shaft drive area, inside that whole unit, that moisture can cause trouble. That becomes a problem if you don't take care of it. Pros like Hispania Tours, like I said, don't have a problem because they open it, grease it, maintain it. But what normal person out there wants to open their shaft drive? We bought a shaft drive bike because we didn't want to mess with wrenching and chain lubing. So it's an extremely unfortunate and tedious thing. If you do it properly and maintain it, it's not a problem, but you just don't want to. Long story short, every 20,000 kilometers, it has to be inspected at BMW, and every 60,000 kilometers, BMW recommends replacement. Long distance riders have found that if you keep it clean, keep it maintained, and you do that drain hole so the fluid can actually leave, then the shaft drive lasts longer. But still, it's a thing you have to watch. The good part is when buying used, you usually notice it. It starts making this scraping and creaking noise while riding, especially when the suspension moves, when there's dynamics in it. If you know the bike, you feel, okay, now it's starting to cause problems. And then you're facing an expensive story, depending on where you do it and how you do it, around 2,000 euros in that ballpark. But nobody posts their workshop invoices in the comments about shaft drives. So it's this super annoying topic because it overshadows the whole long distance theme of this motorcycle. Because everything else works unbelievably well over long distances. And the shaft drive is exactly the feature people want because they don't want to screw around and clean and maintain like with a chain. What I also have on the bike here as an accessory, you might have seen it, is the Qiji AI05, which is unbelievably good. I mean, these BMW nav systems aren't bad either. But for me, this is a game changer. My phone is plugged in, connected via Bluetooth. I can plan my Kalemodo tour on the phone beforehand. I can do Google Maps. I can have recently selected gas stations saved. And I can control it through the BMW unit, through the Wonder Wheel. It's unbelievably awesome and unbelievably easy to install. You switch it on, it just works. It's from Jiggy, it's called IO5 Play. Rarely have I had something electronic that causes so little frustration and so much joy. Big recommendation, please post below if you use it too and what your experience is. And overall, if I reflect on my test ride, the feedback from dealers, the feedback from you in the community, I have to say it's one of the best used bikes on the market that you can buy. In Austria, you get nice examples around 15,000 euros. In Germany, around 13,000 euros. In Switzerland, around 14,000 francs. And you shouldn't be scared if they have 40, 60, 70,000 kilometers or even 100,000, because you can ride another 100,000 kilometers on it. And if you think about it, if you want a motorcycle that offers these performance levels, this dynamic capability, together with comfort and sovereignty in the new bike sector, you always have to throw 10,000 euros more on the table. And on a new bike, you also suffer much bigger depreciation. If you buy one now with, say, 6,000 kilometers and ride it up to 80 or 100,000 over 2 or 3 seasons, that's barely any value loss compared to what new bikes do. So it doesn't even compare. So for me, one of the best tips on the used market, and some people feared, yeah, when the 1300 comes, the 1250s will become worthless. Thousands bought the 1300. Who's going to want all the 1250s? And I'd say the opposite. I think there's a fan base that will love that steel tube frame forever, that will love this thing forever. And it's not produced new anymore. So supply and demand, the laws of the market, will make sure it stays very value stable, and you're probably better off buying sooner rather than later. That's my take as a speculator, though I never had a good hand with stocks. But with motorcycles, usually I'm totally biased. And what makes the bike insanely interesting is simply the unbelievably wide used market and the accessory market. If I open Wunderlich's website and scroll through it, you scroll like half a thumb length, you see crash bars, then little, crash pads, axle protectors, and then you reach the end and it says 42 more pages, just parts, just from Wunderlich for the BMW R1250GS. That's insane. And then you have that again from other manufacturers too. The Wunderlich is, of course, the home game here. It's really impressive, and there's truly something for everyone to fine-tune the GS in their own direction. And one more thing that's important to me, people who really have a lot of kilometers on this bike, please comment below. I don't know, 100,000 plus would be amazing, but we'll take 80,000 too, because at our big motorcycle event, 1000 PS together with the Neukirchen Tours on board at the 1000 PS New Church Summit in Neukirchen am Großvenediger from June 25th to June 28th, 2026. We would love to bring long distance pilots who've experienced a lot with the GS in front of the camera. So if you have one and you want to come there, post in the comments. We'll bring you in front of the camera, and in the evening, I'll happily pay you a little juice. So please come, write in the comments, I'm coming, so we know where to instruct the camera crew to go. Then we'll set a meeting point and we'll film your real, authentic, practical experience in New Church with the R1250GS. And you R1250GS pilots can also use New Church to have a look around. BMW will be there with a big presence. There will be the R12GS for test rides and the R1300GS for test rides. You can ride both, and then you can decide for yourself if you want to stay loyal or put a companion into the garage or whatever. That's for you to decide there. In any case, we'd be happy if you visit us at the 1000 PS New Church Summit, and that's going to be a great thing, being able to exchange experiences together. So yeah, please post down below your experiences, what you like and dislike about your BMW R1250GS, your tire tips, your long distance experiences, so that this becomes an honest, solid, extensive knowledge base for this dream travel motorcycle. Thank you for your interest. Thanks for joining in, and see you soon on 1000 PS TV.